Everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life. I'm your host, Lori Plow, and I'm so happy that you're here. Uh, just full disclosure for anybody that is watching this on YouTube, uh, it is currently like dinner time ish, and I normally record in the morning, and I did not refresh my makeup, so I just actually took a look at myself for the first time as I hit record, and I'm like, wow, that's a long day. So you're seeing it all in real time, guys, and this is as authentic as it gets. So here we are. But I wanted to get this episode in time because coming up next week, if you aren't already signed up, or if you are getting our emails, if you're not on our email list, we have our Clutter Clinic Closet Workshop. Say that 10 times fast. It is our live 1 hour. I'm almost thinking of it as like a live podcast, but you have to be registered. It is invite only. And guess what? You are all invited. But in order to get access, you have to register. That's the thing. And we are going to be jumping off a series, and it's going to be for the next 6 months. And every month, we are going to be capturing a different topic of organization. And we're going to look at really tangible, like roll up your sleeves, tangible strategies for different types of people in different situations, how I approach it. This is a great, I think the word's overplayed, but I'll use it like a boot camp for people that want some extra assistance, motivation, and maybe you're not in a position to hire a professional organizer for whatever reason. It could be monetarily, it could be shame, embarrassment. There could be a host of reasons, but you really want some specific one-on-one beyond what you're already getting through the podcast or reading books or whatever it is. So this is a great bridge into basically having a personal trainer for organizing. And so we're going to drop the link below. Again, also, if you aren't getting our emails, make sure that if you sign up for it, you'll automatically then be prompted to get that. But I don't want you to miss out on the different things. So, in the spirit of kind of having closets on the brain, since spring is officially here, and that's when a lot of people, depending on where you live, start to swap out your clothes seasonally. I thought it would be fun to do an episode about closets. And I also have been getting a lot of requests recently to do some more episodes about the Enneagram. And so I thought, why not blend the two? And so that's exactly what I'm doing today. So the topic officially is called Closet Organizing Tips for Each Enneagram Type. And if you are brand new to the Enneagram, you don't know what it is, I'm going to give you very, very, very high level. We've got tons of bingeable episodes that talk all about the Enneagram, but essentially it's a personality typology. There's 9 core types. Each type has its own unique characteristics, and it is your Enneagram type is determined by your unconscious motivation, meaning, in layman's terms, why you do what you do. So it's less about the behavior and more about why are you doing that behavior. And so when it comes to clutter and organization and control and communication, we all have different methods that we use to communicate. And the Enneagram is an incredible tool to help you understand not just yourself, but the people in your life and specifically the people in your home. Because as I'm sure you can attest, the way you do things might look very different than the way your spouse or your partner does things. And if you have kids, you have one kid that's super type A and another kid that is like, the crazy wild child. So when we understand a little bit about human development and personality, it gives us a lens into how others see the world. And so much about clutter has to do with conflict. And what we want to try to do is not just mitigate the actual physical clutter, but we want to mitigate some of the conflict that results from that. And so I'm going to go through each of the different 9 Enneagram types, and give 3 specific tips. Now, if you don't know your Enneagram type, that's totally fine. But this information may give you a little bit of an insight to, oh, that might be me, or this might be my partner. Not that we're supposed to type people, but there are certain characteristics that tend to lend itself to certain people in the world of clutter and organization. So let's kick it off. So type 1, they are known as, oh, and again, for all of our newbies, there's no good or bad type, right? There's great qualities about every type, and there's unhealthy qualities about every type. So the goal is to be the best version of yourself. All right, let's kick it off. Ones are the perfectionist, and your perfectionists are orderly and structured, and they like things to be just so. So you have that kind of stereotypical image of, you know, all of your clothes in, color coded order and everything's folded just so. Doesn't have to be. Again, that's a stereotype. But deep down inside, they are always striving for perfection. And so I think one of the challenges for the ones is to understand that we don't have to live in that Pinterest perfect image that you've set for yourself, because we all know that feelings often like lie to us. They're authentic to who we are, but just because that's how we feel, that doesn't actually make it true. And so, an Enneagram 1 might be like, I can't, sleep at night until I have everything just so. Or if you're a parent of an Enneagram, if you're an Enneagram 1 parent and your kids' stuff is a little disorganized, their drawers are a little disorganized, that might like kind of set you over the edge. And so the challenge or the organizing tip that I have for your Enneagram 1s is to try to find that healthy balance, and understanding that it is kind of that false narrative in your brain that is telling you this has to be just so all the time, right? And I'm, as somebody who craves order and organization, I can completely relate. But there is that healthy balance of done is better than perfect. And so what I recommend is, if you live alone, you can have that level of ownership. But when you live with other people, you recognizing that they're not going to probably be able to meet that standard that you set is something that is going to be kind of, that's where that balance is going to come in, of saying, where can I compromise? How can I not have conflict, either internal conflict or conflict with the other people? And maybe that means you have, a drop zone bin that everybody puts their stuff in so that you don't have to physically see it. If you are a parent and you are working to teach your kids, create a system that is very simple for them to maintain while allowing them to keep order. So these are just some things for you to think about, because again, for the ones, keeping that organized closet is going to come naturally, and you may even like get excited and motivated to do that. But if you live with other people, they may not share that same enthusiasm as you, and the value that they place on organizing is likely going to be very different than the value that you place on it. And so trying to find that sweet spot is going to be really important for our Enneagram 1s. Now, our Enneagram 2s are known as the helper. So their 2s are, they're givers. They oftentimes struggle with self-care. The cliche for the type 2 is put your oxygen mask on first, because they are notorious for sacrificing their own happiness for the well-being of others, almost to the point of becoming a martyr. And we don't want that, right? We all want to be a helper. We want to do things selflessly. I come from a place of service, and I'm sure you do as well. But it's not crossing over that threshold from service to sacrifice on the daily, right? And I know that's oftentimes hard, especially as parents, because so much of what we do is sacrifice. But we want to make sure that we are prioritizing ourselves. So what could that mean in the world of an Enneagram 2? Well, one of the things is you may not prioritize even going through your closet to cycle stuff out. You may just say, you know what, I'm just going to either wear my old stuff. I'm not going to go and spend the time or the money investing in it. So I say lean into, for your Enneagram 2, like lean into prioritizing your own closet, your own things, and just valuing the time to allow yourself to spend to declutter and organize. That is not just good for your physical space, but also your mental well-being. We go through different seasons, literally and figuratively in life. And when we neglect ourselves and our space, emotionally, physically, all of these things, it ripples into other areas and it winds up becoming counterproductive. So again, going back to that, put your oxygen mask on first, because if you are no good to yourself, you're not going to be good to other people. And at the core, that's really important to choose. The other things is a lot of times twos are on the go, right? Because they're doing a million different things. So make whatever system you create, make it super easy. So you can grab and go, because most twos, actually most people I know, don't have a lot of time to get dressed. So I think that's almost like a universal tip, is just to make it simple. But specifically, if this isn't something that you're like, I'm not going to spend time, folding my clothes into like origami shapes, that's fine. But just make it easy, accessible. And I always say organization is all about the ease of retrieval. So how quickly can I find what I'm looking for? And a lot of times twos will just make organizing an afterthought because they're doing so many other things. So they'll just like throw it in the closet or throw it in the drawer or throw it in the corner or whatever. And that makes it that much harder later. So just give yourself that time, that gift of time, to say, you know what? I owe it to myself to put things back where they belong. I need to take that extra 30 seconds to a minute to fold that, hang that, put that away, whatever that looks like. Okay. Type threes. Now, this is an interesting one. Threes are known as the achiever. They're very image conscious, they're goal oriented, and doesn't mean that they're shallow, but image is very important to them. Image in the workplace, image in their personal life. And so most threes that I know, and I'm married to a three, and a couple of my clients are threes. And I feel like I can pick a three out of a lineup at this point because I've studied them so much. And what I find really interesting is threes really, really despise physical clutter. They don't like it. They don't like disorder. They don't like disorganization. It bothers them. And you might be thinking, well, who doesn't? Well, there are types that it really doesn't stress them out. But threes actually have like a visceral reaction. They don't like clutter. They don't want to see it. However, they're also about the path of least resistance. So threes can be impulsive. So they'll quickly just like throw something away or shove it away so that it's out of sight. So it becomes an out of sight, out of mind. The problem with that is they oftentimes wind up, when they go to look for what they want, they can't find it because they don't remember where they shoved it, put it, or like I said, maybe threw it away. So what happens then? They wind up spending, they repeat this cycle of buying, and then they wind up with a lot of excess. And the other thing that I find very fascinating about threes as like a study of human development is threes in particular. I think, and again, no offense to any threes out there, and feel free to reach out to me. I think they have a really difficult time communicating how clutter makes them feel. And if you read my book, and again, not to shameless plug Hot Mess, but if you read the book, there's a whole chapter on the impact of clutter and how it makes you feel. And I say all the time that is one of the leading drivers of conflict, is the fact that people can't articulate what the clutter means to them in a bigger sense, outside of the obvious of a pile of dishes or papers or fill in the blank, right? There's this other like almost existential feeling that we have, that a lot of us have when it comes to clutter. And threes in particular, it really rocks their world, but they don't know how to they're not necessarily in touch with that. And so communicating that to the people in their life doesn't go smoothly. And what happens is they wind up exploding. They wind up being, I'm just going to come in there with a garbage bag and throw everything away. Lashing it out and just kind of like having this displaced anger or frustration. That's not all threes. Again, I'm saying these things with generalizations, but I know that this could be an issue. And oftentimes threes are, because they don't want to like focus in on the emotion and they want to more focus in on the action. What can I do? They'll just jump to like the nearest response. And that's where that impulsivity comes in. So what can our threes do? Threes can just, I would say, work on setting healthy boundaries with your stuff. I think for a lot of people, it's focus on what's yours to do. Start creating if you want to. And this is especially true for other types like the ones who may have a tendency to kind of control a situation. If you want to, make your space, your dressers, your closet super perfect, that's fine. But try not to impart that necessarily to that extent to the other people. And if there are setting boundaries of like, I can't have clutter in the common areas before we go to bed, right? We need to clean that up. Or I don't want you to leave your clothes on the floor, or your closet's a mess. We have to clean this up. Having these specific communication pieces is really, really important for the threes. Okay. Now, let's swing the pendulum to the other side where we have our Enneagram fours who are known as the individualist. Now, our individualists are your stereotypical creative, sentimental people who struggle with letting things go. So it's not that they necessarily love clutter, but they actually place an emotional component with their stuff. Their stuff becomes personified into part of their history, part of their story. This was a shirt I wore to this concert. I was wearing these sneakers when I filmed the blank. I got this toy when I was at the fair of blah, 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 blah. Right. So every tangible thing has a story, which makes it really, really challenging for Enneagram fours to make decisions about getting rid of things, because they oftentimes personify these things. And when you personify something, it winds up in your mind taking on a life of its own. And so that creates a level of decision fatigue, of knowing what you're going to keep, what you're going to get rid of. And fours struggle with execution sometimes. They toggle between emotion and being in their head. And so the act of actually doing something and taking that step to say, okay, I'm going to donate this, I'm going to get rid of this, is oftentimes challenging. And I say, for Enneagram fours, please enlist a buddy, right? Give yourself space. Don't rush it. I think someone like a three is going to want to rush through it and like get it done because they don't want to feel that uncomfortableness. The fours don't mind feeling uncomfortable. And so they will oftentimes indirectly, like, or unintentionally, I should say, drag it out. And we don't want that, right? We don't want this decluttering and organizing your closet to be this like ongoing thing. We want to have a system. We want to work through it. And, routines are boring to an Enneagram 4, right? They don't like that. There's a couple of different Enneagram types that are kind of like, wah, wah, I don't really like that. And 4s happen to be one of them. But giving yourself some boundaries is really important. I think it's also really helpful, and I'm a mother to an Enneagram 4. I think it's really helpful to have somebody else give you some very specific data parameters. Like we can fit 10 sweatshirts, 5 pairs of jeans, whatever the situation is. And you need somebody that maybe has a less of an emotional and more of an analytical brain to help you with that, understanding that kind of spatial relation component, because that will allow you to then say, oh, this is really what the amount of stuff that I can keep. And as we work through it, we can kind of come up with a system. But a lot of the 4s live in the gray, and we need a little black and white to balance that out. Okay. Moving into the fives, okay, swing it back. Your fives are known as the investigator or the observer, and they are your analytical data people. Now, your fives may not struggle with a ton of clutter because they're not necessarily like shoppers, but they are a lot of fives you'll find are oftentimes minimalists, but they're savers, and they're savers out of function. I might need this someday, not out of fear, but out of scarcity. So fives oftentimes struggle with that scarcity mindset. And because of that, they don't want to part with things because I don't want to waste the time or the money to have to rebuy it. So they will hold on to things well past its prime. So they might be holding on, you think about the closet, they might be holding on to things that are either out of style, or maybe they're so worn and it's like, okay, I think this has seen better days. Maybe we need to replace this. And so, again, making the time to go through it and actually um, have a system in place is really important for a five. So I think where they're going to shine is their brains already work very analytically. And so having that step by step, we're going to do it like this. We're going to sit down, we're going to empty, we're going to sort into our 4 piles, keep, donate, recycle, relocate. Then we're going to, remove the other stuff. Then we're going to put it back in our closet. In the meantime, we're going to take notes of what things we got rid of that we need to replace. So maybe my sneakers were, you know, the soles were worn out. So I need to go shopping or order new sneakers. So you're going to work through very methodically, and that clarity will sit really well with the five because they don't like ambiguity. Fives like to know what's going on. They are not your go with the flow people. They want structure, they want routine, they crave knowledge, they want to have a plan. So having a plan going into it, letting them know how long you're going to work on this project, not like we're going to work on it till it's done, but like we're going to work on it for an hour and reassess. Like give them very specific benchmarks. That is how you will continue to help motivate or get that buy-in from an Enneagram 5. All right. You guys still with me? All right, we're moving right along. Now, our sixes are known as the loyalists. Now, our sixes they're very focused on security, right? Fear is a kind of an underline, it's like right under the surface for a six. So they're oftentimes your worst case scenario thinkers. So I need to hold on to this because fill in the blank, that kind of just in case stuff. And so what I think is really important, especially when it comes to closets and clothes, is they may have stuff living in their space that I might need it if, and I'm not saying you have to get rid of it. You might hold on to it, but it might not need to live in your current rotation. It might not need to live in your prime real estate. It might be able to live in a guest room closet or somewhere else. Just like with your fours, they may have sentimental items that they want to hold on to, but they might not be wearing them now. So if you're not wearing it and you want to keep it as a keepsake, it may not need to live in your closet if you don't have the luxury of space. Granted, if you have a big walk-in closet and you've got tons of drawers and you can afford to have that kind of discretionary area, that's one thing. But I'm talking about the average person like myself who really needs to maximize the space that I have with the stuff that I'm going to currently wear and use. And so if that's you and you find that you're six and you're holding on to things for that like once in a blue moon thing that you might be wearing or needing, think about where else can I store that, right? It could be for shoes, it could be for outerwear, it could be whatever it is, fill in the blank. And of course, if you really don't think that you're going to need it or it's something that's no longer fits you or can serve somebody else, then of course it's time to donate it and get rid of it. But again, like everything, you want to create a simple system. And I think that's just regardless of your Enneagram type, you want to find a simple system that works for you. And keeping things organized so that with like label bins, I think is also helpful for sixes, having it right then clear where they can see it. If there is, a situation they just they like to know where things are. And so just that ease of retrieval will mitigate some of that overwhelm that your sixes might face. Okay, we got three more types to go. So our type sevens are known as the enthusiast, and the enthusiasts are spontaneous and they love variety and they oftentimes struggle with some discipline. And they are people that definitely would rather be doing something else than organizing a closet. Now, one of my dear colleagues, and she's been a guest on our show, Martha Carroll Stewart from Chaos Organizing in Baton Rouge. Shout out to Martha Carroll. She's an Enneagram 7 and she loves to organize. So I'm not saying that you can't find those needle in a haystacks, but by and large, an Enneagram 7 would rather be doing anything else other than organizing. And here's a little tip I'm going to tell you. One of the things that people think about when they think about organization is, again, what I mentioned at the top of the episode about people like folding everything perfectly and making it all just so. You can be organized without hitting that level of perfection, and I think that Enneagram 7s are a prime example of that. And you could have, you don't have to fold all your underwear or your bras. You could just put them in that drawer. And as long as you know where they are and you can get them, and I understand me saying this might be nails on a chalkboard to some people, but pick and choose where you want to spend your time. Like, no, do I want my shirts to be crumpled up in a ball in the corner or wrinkled? No, for a variety of reasons. But do I have to spend my time folding everything perfectly when I could allocate that time somewhere else? As long as they're all corralled and organized, and if they're nice and neat in a bin. And I subscribe to this with sheets. A lot of times, you know, people fight with a fitted sheet of how to fold it. And I was one of those people for a long, long time. And I finally was like, I am not going to visually get this to the point of that I really want. And I don't want to spend the time to do it. Like, this is just crazy town. And so I did the best I could. And then I put them in a basket with the, labeled twin sheets or whatever the size was that I was using. And I kept it organized without having to reach that level of perfectionism. And so that's just like a good rule of thumb. If you've got like an Enneagram 1 living with an Enneagram 7, where you can find that kind of happy sweet spot of it looks organized, but the Enneagram 7 doesn't have to go, to the extreme that the Enneagram 1 might want them to do. I think gamifying things is always a great thing, especially when it comes to kids. But even with adults, if you're an Enneagram 7 and you're like, I really don't want to do this, give yourself a little like challenge. Like, I'm going to do this for 30. I'm going to do the, one item a day for 30 days. I'm going to do a dance party and like listen to something for an hour while I'm decluttering, or listen to a podcast, or whatever it looks like, or I'm going to reward myself. I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to go to a Pilates class, whatever that, prize is for you. Make it fun. Grab a friend and say, let's do a decluttering challenge. Let's do a closet organizing. Who can, declutter more of their clothes in a 30-day period, and the loser takes the winner out, to dinner or something. There's so many different creative ways that you can make the decluttering and organizing process fun for somebody who isn't naturally inclined to want to do that. Okay. Type 8. That's me, guys, known as the challenger. Challengers are notoriously confident, decisive, and we value efficiency. So the good news is we are quick decision makers. I am yet to meet an Enneagram 8 that doesn't know what they want, and they're not afraid to make a mistake, because we'll just fix it. We'll just figure it out. If we get rid of something and we decided, oh, we shouldn't have, we don't ruminate on that. Where some of the other types really ruminate on things. We are, and we're not really getting into kind of the triads, but the thinking, feeling, doing. We're not really big in the feelings, the 8s. So we don't struggle with a lot of emotional clutter. Where our challenge is, we're going all the time. So we need to actually take a beat and give a little attention to our stuff. I find as an Enneagram 8, decision fatigue is real for me. So I don't like to have a lot of options. The fewer options I have, the easier it is for me to get dressed in the morning, to pack if I'm going on a trip, and to just the whole process is so much more calm for me. So if you went in my closet, you're going to not see 50,000 sweaters. You're going to see like five. If you watch our show on YouTube, you probably see me wearing the same clothes over and over again, because I don't like a lot of options because I want that efficiency. And unlike the threes who are more image conscious and they have like different vibes for different situations, that's just not my jam. So for me, it's really about how can I make this efficient? How can I keep the clutter at bay and really getting on that routine of like rinse and repeat, doing it, you know, twice a year and working. And this is where the challenge of the eight always comes in. And if you listen to any of our other Enneagram series or episodes, when I talk about the eight, I always say grace, 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 grace for other people, because eights are explosive and we have really thick skin and we tell it like it is, but we often fail to remember that other people aren't as necessarily thick skinned as us. And we run the risk of unintentionally hurting people's feelings or being like just overbearing in our delivery. And so if you are a partner to, if you're an eight and your partner's not, just be mindful of that they might not be able to process things or make those decisions as quickly as you do. Certainly, if you're a parent and you're an eight parent and you're parenting kids, and chances are they're probably not an eight. I don't know why I said chances are, but like in my case, my kids were not eights. Just be mindful of your delivery, because your black and white cut dry approach that works for you and might work for a couple of the other types, like a three, may really be counterproductive to other types. And so specifically moving into kind of the type nine, which is the last one that we're going to round out, which are the peacemakers. So peacemakers are conflict avoidant. They are very easygoing and they will procrastinate because they don't want to have to make decisions. They're super smart, but they don't give themselves enough value. And they kind of like I'll just deal with it later. Um, a lot of times I say that nines are what I call clutter blind. They just don't see it because they're just chill and they're focused in on other things. And so for a nine, if you are a nine and you live with somebody who is a little either a one, a three, an eight, I'm sure you probably have felt berated at some points, because the breakfast dishes don't bother you. The clothes on the floor don't bother you. And they do for other people. And so trying to have that respectful balance of we're going to set some boundaries of you want to have a mess. And we used to do this in our family, right? I would say to my daughter, who is a nine, if you want to have your room be a mess and you want to have stuff around, and this is when she was a teenager, and it was at the point where I was like, I'm not going to come and clean up your room. You know what to do. You're just choosing not to do it. And at that point, I'm like, okay, so that is your space, and I will respect that. I know a lot of people feel like it's my house, whatever. People have different opinions, but we chose to say, this is your space. You can treat it how you'd like, within reason, of course. But you cannot allow your clutter blindness to gravitate into the common areas. Meaning, if you make a mess in the family room or the kitchen, you need to clean that up. You cannot leave it like a tornado just because it's not bothering you or stressing you out, because other people are living in this space. And so having that clear communication and setting that boundary is really, really important and healthy. And I do think, though, that it is very important to model that behavior for the Enneagram 9, because as chill as they seem on the outside, there's oftentimes some anxiety underneath the hood of the car. And so they might not even realize on a conscious level the impact that the physical clutter is having on them. And so they may not prioritize going through their closet or their drawers seasonally. But if you sit there and work with them, and time is a big thing. So give them again a very specific, measurable amount of time, just like you would with the fives. Like, we're going to do this for 20 minutes. We're just going to go, and then you can go on your merry way. That is a lot more digestible for the nine, as opposed to just saying, okay, we're going to do this till it's done. And then that just, again, has too much ambiguity and can become overwhelming. Okay. Final take final takeaways. I know I just gave you guys a lot of content. Okay, number 1, there is no right way to organize. There's no one size fits all. You need to just figure out a system that's going to work for you and your personality. And if you are living with other people, how is that system and strategy going to affect other people? If you're working about your closet, worry about your closet. If you're a parent and you have littles, you can navigate their closet. As they get older, you are going to have to set some boundaries. If you are a partner and if you're in a relationship and you are either married or live with somebody and you share a closet, then you guys need to have some compromise of like ownership of who's going to do what. If they're separate closets and one wants to be a little bit of a mess and you want to be organized, or vice versa, I think having that communication piece of like, what are we willing to fight about? What is important to us? What are our values? And how does that play in is really, really a healthy conversation to have about our closets and other spaces in the house. But it's using the closet is a great springboard. And, if you're out there and you're like, hey, I think I want to dive a little bit deeper into this, check out some of the Enneagram uh, podcasts that we've done in the past. They're not necessarily geared to closets, but they're just more about the Enneagram in general. We also have a lot of Enneagram resources on our website. We've got a digital course, and I'm going to be doing some workshops on the Enneagram if you're interested in that. But speaking of workshops, just one final reminder that next week, we're going to be doing our Clutter Clinic Closet Workshop. Would love to have you there. It's $37 to join. If you can't make it live, you will be getting the replay. So don't worry about that, but you must be registered to be able to access it. You will not be able to access it elsewhere. So just know that you have to sign up for that if you're interested. And I will drop that link. It'll be in the show notes wherever you're listening. It's also going to be on our website. So just there's a workshop tab right on our homepage. Just click on that and it'll take you right there. So that's it. That's what I got for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out.